keeping you up to date with the latest in Texas Tech sports. This is the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3.
Episode number 14 of the Ask Level podcast. Welcome in, alongside Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman, here powered by Double T 97.3. Regular season complete for Texas Tech football. A 7-5 record after the Red Raiders take out the Oklahoma Sooners, 51-48 in overtime. Level, third overtime game this season. All three have gone the way of the Red Raiders. Have you come down from that one yet?
Well, there's, I always say that, there's different feelings after a season is over. Like depending on what your record is, there are different ways that a 6-6 record can feel, or a 7-5 record, or an 8-4 record. I remember back in the Mike years, there were some 8-4 seasons where there wasn't a lot of tangible substance there. It's like, okay, you didn't beat anybody of note, or whatever it may be. But this is a very different feeling 7-5. It's a very satisfying 7-5 season with some teeth to it, and I think beating Oklahoma and Texas for the first time ever in the same season. I think the fact that you have a winning record in the Big 12, it was year one, and all the injuries and just quarterback carousel that you dealt with. It makes it, and the fact that you won down the stretch, and the best way I can describe this team is that you win 14-10 one week, and then you win 51-48 the next.
It's perfect.
And that just kind of sums up who they are and what they're about. It's not perfect. It's not, but it's complimentary football. I mean, I don't know how you want to describe it, but the offense did just enough in 1 week, and the defense did just enough the week before, and there's no ego inside that facility. Nobody cares who's getting the shine or the sparkle or whatever it may be. They just want to win. And ultimately that's exactly what you got.
Yeah. I think the complimentary football is the best way to put it. I mean, that's what Joey preached about coming in, that we'll be a team that feeds off of each other. But I think the 7-5 thing is so true. Think about the 7-5 you had in year one under Cliff Kingsbury. Felt totally different because you played all your easier games up front. You start out 7-0 and then go on a 5-game losing streak to finish the season. Yeah. The fact that you finished this one on a 3-game winning streak sure makes you feel like the trajectory of this program is moving up. And man, it just, you're right. The 7-5 satisfying is a good word to use for this one. Now, you don't get fat and happy, obviously, and I know Joey McGuire's not, but it's crazy the year that the Big 12 has had. For you to come out in fourth place, that feels pretty good.
Well, and you're picked to do so poorly before the season starts and picked to finish ninth. And then you finish fourth place all by yourself. I think that's pretty satisfying. And again, what would it have looked like had Tyler Shuck been healthy all season? What would it have looked like if Cole Spencer, is playing as a starter on that offensive line all season? I mean, things like that. I mean, we will never know, but you could keep going with everything. If Tyree Wilson would have been able to, although you've won both the games that he didn't play. It's just, and the fact, some other things, you're 6-1 at home. That was one of the knocks on this program
absolutely
over the last decade, is you couldn't ever give the fans a show or something to be excited about. You just couldn't sustain success at home, and overwhelmingly you gave them as much entertainment on the dollar this season as you could have ever hoped for, because you mentioned that 3 overtime wins, 3 field storming, situations, and against Houston, Texas, and then Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately win 6 of your 7 home games. And it's just and a couple other things. You win 4 one-score games this season,
Right.
which
That's one that's been a
that
huge
tells
knock.
you, yeah, you win the close ones. But the best way I'd go back to winning 14-10 one week and 51-48 the next. That just
Crazy.
kind of, that just sums up who this particular team is. Like whatever needs to step up does. And anyway, and I think you'll be rewarded for the way you finished here by a pretty good bowl game and a fun destination. And you won't be playing at a baseball stadium, I don't think, or
Yeah.
a game in the Metroplex against Conference USA or American type team. You're going to get a Power 5 opponent, and you're going to be pretty high up on the pecking order from a bowl standpoint. So that part's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I think Level, just as we wrap this up and then look towards what we saw against OU, this feels, I mean, the feeling as a Red Raider fan should be the best, or for me, is the best I've felt about this program since I can't remember. I mean, I really can't put a finger on how good I felt finishing out a season since probably sometime during the Leach era. Because again, you can go back to that Cliff Kingsbury year that felt optimistic. It had an optimistic feeling. And I'm talking regular season here because you felt pretty good after winning the Holiday Bowl that year. But finishing out a regular season, I can't remember a year where I've felt this optimistic about the program.
Yeah, because you've seemingly tailed off. November has not
Yeah.
been very kind to you in many years, and this was a team that I think showed you that it improved as the season went along, or it
Yep.
got better.
Mm-hmm.
And other than the Baylor game, you really weren't ever out of any game at all. That's
Sure.
the other thing. There was not, and that one is just a case of, Baylor was better than you that night, and it doesn't help when you turn the ball over as many times as you did with the 5 interceptions. But
Sure.
That's the other thing, as I think even you go back to look at the game in Stillwater, the game in Fort Worth. I mean, if your quarterback, and Baron Morton in that case, in both of those games, if he stays healthy, I think you like your chances of being able to finish that with a lead or right in the game until in the fourth quarter. It sounds cliche, but man, these kids just kept playing. They didn't quit. They kept fighting. I mean, and here's a great little microcosm to kind of like glean from last night is that it's 2nd and 2
Mm-hmm.
with about a little over 3 minutes left in the first half. I think 3:10 or maybe 3:13, somewhere around in there. You're down 24-6. You're down 18 points.
Yep.
And there's three minutes and change left in the first half. It's 2nd down. And you end up going to the locker room from that standpoint. You go to the locker room down 24-23. You score 17 points in a very short 3-minute span. And that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable to see how you have that fight and that fire, but you can put it into motion too. I mean, you can have the want to all you want, but this team does have the ability, and they put that into work several times this year. But that one in particular on the OU game where you score the 17 points in the 3-minute span is
well, that's what allowed you that's what allowed you to be in a position, because I mean, it's 17-0, then it's 24-6.
Yep.
And you're thinking, and you're just out of sorts. Penalties, a mistimed snap, just some different things. You just can't get anything going on offense. And meanwhile, Oklahoma's just rolling through you. And they make no mistake. I mean, that's Marvin Mims could play for anybody in the Big 12.
Sure.
Eric Gray could play for anybody in the Big 12. They've got a few dudes over there that are just better than most. And they'll play at the next level because of it. It just, there was a few defensive busts too that we had not seen a lot of, but it's like, man, don't not know where number 17 is for Oklahoma. He might be a guy you want you want to cover. But yeah, but so just to deal with all of that and kind of, sort through all that and get it corrected. Pretty fun to watch, man, and pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
As well.
The 17-0, the 24-6 deficits, and we could sit here and say it over and over, but how many years in the past are you probably seeing a team lay down and lose by 30 plus points? I mean, we've seen that story so many times in the last decade, where you get off to bad starts and it just continues to be a bad game.
20-0 at NC State, you're down.
Yeah.
And then you come most of the way back there before it gets out of hand very late.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I just think it's a credit to Joey and his staff, man, and Tim and Zach and just all those people that he's got over there. But yeah, Joey he's got a way of tapping into those guys, and like they don't give in. They keep grinding. And it's a culture thing, and there's a lot of kids that care, I mean, so it just 14-10 and then 51-48, man. I mean, just it's like because we saw, I mean, you put up and you give up nearly 700 yards of offense and still win. But you had as much offense in the first half last night as you did in the entire game last week, it seemed like. But that's what it took.
Well, I think the stat was you had 265 yards in the second quarter against OU, and you had 246 total in the game against Iowa State.
There you go.
And the ability to be that kind of chameleon team where you can blend to your environment, so to speak, is I think
a sign of a good team.
Yeah, an attribute to coaching of one that, hey, you'll adapt to what you have to do to win a football game. And Tech did a great job of that both of the last 2 weeks. So getting the W against OU, and now it is bowl time. You get to head to one of those destinations and play an ACC or an SEC team, or where most of the projections are going to have you this week is in the Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando or the Texas Bowl in Houston. Most of them will have you in one of those two spots, and Level, I guess that's going to depend on what happens with TCU next Saturday in the Big 12 championship, right? Because it'll matter. Everybody kind of gets knocked down a spot if Kansas State happens to take out TCU. Or help me with this: does Kansas State automatically get that Sugar Bowl bid, and then TCU would get at large for?
You're saying if Kansas State wins that game?
Yeah.
So if Kansas State, but bottom line is those two programs are both going to be in the high pecking order.
Okay.
Win or lose, like either TCU goes to the playoff, and then I think Kansas State fills the automatic spot in the Sugar Bowl. I believe the Sugar Bowl. Yeah. And if Kansas State wins, they get that slot, and then TCU would be picked as an at-large. But
in the New Year's Six Bowls,
in the New Year's Six Bowls, and there's some thought that TCU, win or lose, they're going to make it to the playoff anyway. So, so basically, then Texas will go to the Alamo Bowl is the thinking, and then I think Orlando picks next, and you're sitting there at fourth, and you've got a better record than Big 12 wise and others, so I mean, I think it kind of points you to Orlando against maybe the loser of the ACC title game, whether it be Clemson or North Carolina. That's kind of the thinking that is out there. There's a variety of things that could change and backdoor deals and all that, but there's nothing that suggests that Oklahoma State or Baylor, based on the way that they finished their seasons, because you're hot. That's the thing. You've got an excited fan base. You've won. You're hot. And I don't think Alamo would pick you over Texas, even though you have a head-to-head win. They have more wins. They finished somewhat strong too, winning a few games here at the tail end and all that. But it really just points to Orlando on December the 29th against the loser of the ACC title game. It's just so that's really where the heavy favorite would be from a bowl standpoint, and that's it's the Cheez-It Bowl. That's a fun game, and it's a warm climate, and it'd be a fun trip for those kids if that's what ends up happening.
I think you'd have a lot of Red Raider fans that'd be plenty happy with the Orlando Bowl. Maybe not for travel I mean, maybe there's some that could get to the Houston game a little easier, but in terms of destination, those people that go to the bowl game, wherever it is every year, I think Orlando would be a nice welcome sight because you haven't been there since '02, right? 20 years?
Yeah, I'm in the Tangerine Bowl.
Yeah.
That's against Clemson.
Which is technically this bowl game. I mean, it's changed names 10 times.
And I think that one was before, slightly before Christmas. I want to say it was actually played before Christmas. It was on maybe like the December 23rd. Yeah, that's right.
I remember that was the first bowl game I ever attended. And I was 12 years old, got to see Cliff Kingsbury direct the band. And that one was pretty satisfying because of I remember riding to the game level on a bus. We parked somewhere and rode on a bus over to the game. And there's a lot. I mean, South Carolina's right there. So there's a lot of Clemson fans on the bus, and they were just talking the mess. And they were very confident they were going to wipe the floor with Texas Tech that day. But the tables turned, and it went the other direction. So that was a fun one. Would love to see something like that about a month from now when you play in late December, but most likely your bowl site. We'll get those officially.
Yeah, when's the last time you thought about Charlie Whitehurst and Tommy Bowden?
It's been a little bit. But
yeah, I mean, old Tommy Bowden over there on the sideline, and Charlie Whitehurst, I think, was the Clemson quarterback at the time.
Man, he was running for his life in that game. Was it Aaron Hunt? I believe that was in the backfield the whole game. Man, that was some good memories.
And I believe Cliff Kingsbury would climb the ladder after the game and direct the band.
Directed the band, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. He went Peyton Manning on everybody.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
That's right. That's
Aaron.
Right.
I want to say Aaron Hunt got a carry in that game as well, like old Hutchings got. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, and that was a lot of fun watching Big Jalen get his carry, and former running back in high school, and I love the way back on the game versus Oklahoma. I really love the different variations. It was as much as we'd seen it all season, but it was a lot of different variations of the Donovan Smith stuff, and throwing it to him, decoying with him, having him be the lead blocker. I mean, you kind of saw a variety of it with the two-back set, and I thought, there was clearly all kinds of things they could do out of that particular personnel package. And some of that had to do with no Mason Tharp, so you were really light on tight ends last night. Sure. Really only Baylor Cupp is who you felt comfortable with in the game. And so you had to morph and tweak some different stuff. But I just thought Zach did a really good job of using Donovan in a variety of different ways. And, Tech had some issues with blown coverages, but Oklahoma just did not cover Donovan Smith out of the backfield at all on the one touchdown reception. He's just standing over there wide open.
Is there any possibility? I know there's a lot of people that think there's no way you could have all three quarterbacks back next year, and that's probably true. Is there any possibility that Donovan Smith would turn into a Taysom Hill type of player?
I don't want to rule anything like that out. I think whenever he was recruited here, there was the thought, hey, we're going to let him try out quarterback. However, he's a good enough athlete to where he can do a variety of different things for a football team. And whether it's a role like that, whether it is as a tight end or a receiver or whatever it may be, I think there's some different things that he could certainly do. And he's such a good teammate. I think I think the one criticism of him is that he has a harder time with decision making. I think that the turnovers for him are maybe a bigger problem with him than the other two, and that you could just tell the game hasn't really slowed down for him. He's kind of, he's just kind of in slow motion at times back there as he's kind of trying to decide whether to pull the trigger or whatever. But there's so many things he can do. Ultimately, the decision will come down to, does he want to stay here and be a part of this team and do whatever it may be? It will be asked of him, i.e. different positions or kind of like a utility type role. Or does he just want to go be a quarterback somewhere? Because somebody will give him that opportunity if that's what he wants to do.
Sure.
And we all know his dad so well, who's the current running backs coach at the Giants, DeAndre Smith, and that may come down to what dad thinks is best for him. I really don't know what to tell you. My thing is with the quarterback scenario, if you can just figure out a way to keep 2 of these 3 and come back, okay, next year, and then add Jake Strong to that. So if you can have at least 2 of the 3 come back, I think you're in a really good spot.
And Strong's the 4-star from
he's
Northwest.
he would be the signee, the freshman. And again, he won't be anywhere near ready.
Sure.
But I just, I don't know what that looks like, because people have asked about Tyler. I don't think he wants to transfer anywhere. I really don't. I could be wrong. I just don't think he wants to start all over and do this again. And I think his choice is either stay here or take it to the next level. I don't know what kind of grade he will get or has or whatever. There's some NFL interest in him. I just don't know if it's enough to make him, what his grade technically would be, or do they want to see him, put another year on tape and see if he can stay healthy and all those different things. I don't know,
and since he's getting older, the question is, okay, if he gets a 5th round type of grade, does he want to go ahead and take that now versus hang another year in college?
But back to the original question, I don't think that Donovan would be, opposed to that, but I don't know. That's more of a his and a family decision kind of thing, and a Texas Tech decision as well. But he's so well liked and so bought in, and so that if you could figure out a way to keep him, whatever capacity it is, I think you're better for it.
And I would love so much to see him in a Swiss Army knife type of role where he's just a do-it-all guy. And you're right. I don't know that there's a better teammate on this team than Donovan Smith, or a more liked guy than Donovan Smith. But it is his decision, and you totally understand what he decides to do. But it's a good problem to have if you're Texas Tech. You got so many options there at the quarterback position.
And some of that'll play out in the coming weeks on what guys are going to want to do and decide, and all these different things. And it'll be an interesting next couple of weeks on, hey, this is it for me, or I'm going to come back, or I'm going to go to the portal, or in Texas Tech will be like, hey, we're going to add this guy from the portal. I mean, all that stuff starts to play out here in the coming days as we're seeing around the country. The coaching carousel went from 0 to 60.
Sure did.
Nearly overnight because of the early signing period. You have deals getting done and then basically being announced. It's not like, hey, we're going to interview some people, we're going to bring these people in. No, it's like, okay, here's what's happening. As far as like, here's our next head coach. Kind of thing, which is going to affect Cincinnati. We see a former, Big 12 coach in Matt Rule going to Nebraska. Obviously Luke Fickell, all signs point to Wisconsin. I mean, by the time you hear this, he has already officially been named as the Wisconsin head coach, and on it goes. I mean, so Auburn's still looking for somebody at this point. Colorado is too. Probably should stop talking about these kinds of things, because depending on what you listen to it could have changed a million times. But
true. But
point is, a lot of that activity and portal activity and return or go or whatever it may be all plays out here pretty quickly. And I know we were talking quarterbacks, but there's a whole big picture conversation.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so much going on in the world of college football as the regular season comes to a close. And we'll get into a lot of that in next week's episode with, of course, bowl game and whoever's going where, who's announcing for draft I mean, we'll get into plenty of that, but kind of shifting gears here, and we'll get to a few questions to close it down. Basketball. Obviously, we're into basketball season now. Red Raiders trip to Maui didn't go quite as planned. We talked about 2-1 probably being a success. You end up going 1-2 and losing in a consolation game to Ohio State. What do you feel like? What are your feelings walking away from that tournament and the finish of 1-2?
Well, I think you see some positives, but you also see a lot of flaws, and I think you knew that would be the case whenever you go against better competition. I think the hard thing is you don't even. I mean, technically, I'm not even sure how good you feel about the one win you had, because Louisville is a mess. I mean, just an absolute mess. And I'm afraid that they're going to go on to continue to be much of a mess, and so you're not going to get a lot of rub from that win on your resume. And the problem, really, Choice, is that as you look at your resume and trying to build it for the tournament, you really don't have another chance to add to that in the non-conference up until you play, LSU in late January.
Yeah.
Because Georgetown, who is your next game, which will be this week, they're 4-3. They're not very good. They're picked to basically finish last in the Big East Conference, and they just snapped a 20 or 21 game losing streak earlier this year.
Yep.
Dating back to last season. So they're not going to help you much, and you'd be expected to win that game by quite a bit at home. And so there's just not that many more opportunities to impress. And so you're going to get dropped in the Big 12 conference, which is going to be brutal. I mean, it is, we say it every year, and it's going to be a night in, night out. And I'm afraid what concerns me is that it's a process with the young and new team. Your concern is that there's going to be some of these nights where these freshmen are overwhelmed in these road environments, and I don't know, and we'll see. I just don't know if you're going to be good enough to be able to win all your home games. I just don't know if I see it yet. And granted, you go back to last year, you weren't what you were until early January when kind of the light flipped on. But that team was much older, much more experienced, and they had a leader in Bryson Williams. I don't know who that individual is. And you, for the most part, you were healthy last year. Fardal Zamak is not healthy, and I don't know when you could expect to see him. And again, that'll be a process. Even if he does suit up and go through warm-ups and all that, what you need him to be, it could be weeks and weeks away, even when he does finally suit up, just because he's been rolling around on that scooter for months now. Yeah. And it's basketball shape and foot injuries for big people. And it's a bad combo. So
maybe anyway, he's the spark you need.
Maybe
when he does come back, but it could be a while down the road.
Yeah, just don't expect too much too soon from him. He's not some savior. It's just too much to ask without much time to kind of knock the rust off and kind of work your way in. I mean, ideally, he would be healthy right now and he'd get plenty of these games to kind of get into the groove and get in shape and all that. But I mean, that's not going to be the case. So, again, I think probably a semi-frustrating trip to Maui, I guess, as you look at it. But, the first game went about as I would expect it. And I think if you rebound the ball better and because there's some things that for this team to be any good, this is what they've got to do. Okay. And when it doesn't happen, they're not going to be what you need them to be against good teams. You've got to shoot the three better. Mm-hmm. There's got to be 7 to 10 makes a game on average for this team to, because I loved what Pop Isaacs did. I thought that Lamar Washington was a mixed bag. I thought Elijah Fisher was a mixed bag. Robert Jennings was a mixed bag. Kerwin Walton and DeMaurian Williams have been kind of MIA a little bit. But Bacho and Harmon give you everything they can. I think that a concern is like a guy like Kevin O'Banner. I think this is right, just 13 total rebounds or 13 defensive rebounds total in Maui. Total. Mm-hmm. And this is a guy that was double-double in all these tournament games. And so he's got to give you that every night. This is just the way this thing is built. As you just kind of look at the roster, there's certain guys that just have to give you something. And Jalen Tyson, I think, again, he's maybe your most talented guy, but he's young and still figuring it out too. He doesn't have a ton of experience in college at all. I mean, barely played at the first semester in Austin, sat out last year, and now he's just figuring out the college game now into his 6th or 7th game or whatever it is. So, but he's got to score more for you too, in my opinion. But the 3-point shot and rebounding better, those are just things that simply have to happen. And I'll say this too before we transition. People are figuring out Mark's side defense. It's been around for now 3 to 5 seasons, and people have had plenty of time to practice against it. Other people are running it. So you're not just and there maybe needs to be some adjustments made there, on kind of how you do things, because teams are starting to figure out how to beat it a bit. And you got killed by Ohio State in the corner.
Yep.
and that's kind of by design. I mean, Mark wants those. They're not in the middle. You
Right.
keep them on the side, but when you have guys that can just bombs away from three, man, and they're getting open looks, look out.
No doubt. Yeah, so we'll get into basketball quite a bit as the season rolls along, but you kind of have this period of December coming up where it's mostly try to get yourself right before conference play. And Maui's the learning experience. Now, can you make adjustments off of that and try to better yourself before the absolute gauntlet of Big 12 conference play? Few questions, and then we'll put a bow on this one. Level. We'll start off with one from Sam. He says, does Matt Rule poach any Texas Tech assistants now that he's the Nebraska head man?
Well, most of the guys that are in Lubbock are really tied to Joey and not Matt Rule. And I don't want to be naive and suggest that nobody. It's not just Matt Rule, but like a lot of times you just have coaches poached. That's just the business. If guys have a chance to move up and whatever, then this is what happens. It would be naive to think that you could just bring your whole staff intact back. That rarely happens, whether it's more money or closer to home or an elevation from a position coach to a coordinator, whatever it may be. But I don't think there's any impending threat for Matt Rule taking somebody from Joey's staff. No, I don't.
Yeah. This question from Mark. It says, Level, with Patrick Ewing coming to town this week, do you still get starstruck when you see some of these guys up close?
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Ewing will be a guy that I grew up watching for the Knicks and obviously Georgetown way back in the day. And that'll be fun to kind of see him and all that. He was a longtime NBA assistant before he got this opportunity to coach at his alma mater. But yeah, there's a few guys that I would say that like it's pretty cool to. Yeah. I don't typically get starstruck. You just around it so much, or you just see different, people. And I mean, I was like that with Dennis Rodman. I was that was pretty. When I was around Rodman, a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, whoa, this is the worm, man.
It's the worm.
Yeah, that's right. So. But yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I told you that, I didn't grow up and have a healthy respect for what Patrick Ewing did. He's on the dream team.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the, one of your 50 greatest players of all time on that list. I mean,
he's in Space Jam.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
That was kind of my introduction to Patrick Ewing as a 6-year-old. It's like, why'd this guy just shoot the ball over the basket? And, no, but yeah, Patrick better get it together a little bit, or he may not be the head coach at Georgetown too much longer. I
think you can already see how that'll end up going, but
yeah,
and he just may be best suited from a NBA assistant standpoint too, from a basketball scenario. So
this one from Nathan. Level, who is your MVP of the season on offense and defense for Texas Tech now that the regular season's over?
Man, that is such a great question. And it's really one that is hard to answer because it was such by committee in most cases. Golly, I mean, I think you have to say Tyree Wilson, even though he missed the last 2 games, just because he was simply your best player, period.
Yeah. But man, that defensive pass rush sure stepped up for you against OU.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
They really did. They got in the backfield when they needed to. You think about overtime, getting in Gabriel's face and putting pressure on him, getting that last sack.
Yeah, Choice. If it's not Tyree, I have to say Krishan Merriweather, just because he was as steady and durable and available every game this year. And he's one of the top guys as far as total tackles in the Big 12 conference. So I'll give you 1A and 1B there for defense.
Those are good
on offense, I would probably say to you some sort of, Dennis Wilburn.
Okay.
Which is a bit off the radar.
Sure.
I think he kept the offensive line took lots of bullets from a lot of people this season. They were not very good at times. He was easily the best and most consistent player all season there.
Yeah.
And I think they played him technically out of position. He's more naturally a guard, but he's also the one guy that could snap and call out the fronts and do the different things there. So, you know what? I'll just probably, because I can't, I want to say recency bias would tell me, man, Tyler Shuck's been really hot lately, but he missed so much time.
Sure.
I don't think there's a whiteout that you could point to, and you look at Saradrick and Taj, and it's like their numbers are almost even. Yeah. In the 600 plus yards range. They both had about 6 or 7 touchdowns. I would probably say Dennis Wilburn, just because if you don't have him up front on that offensive line, it goes from very average to bad. And he was the glue that kept that whole thing together, and he's responsible for all the tempo that you do. I mean, that all falls on him, so that's what I'm going to go with.
This guy's a walk-on that, and
that
has done everything you could have ever asked out of him, and he has been as much of a anchor to that offensive line as Coach McGuire and Hamby could have asked for. But, well, that's going to wrap things for us, Level, as we're kind of out of time here. But we will. It's been fun through the regular season, lots of ups and downs, more ups than downs. But we're going to continue this podcast on throughout the year for you guys, and we'll keep rolling. We'll talk a lot of bowl game opportunity next week.
Yeah, next week it'll be fun because you'll have your 13th game all locked up and assigned, and maybe it's Orlando on December the 29th against an ACC team. That's the way
that your hope?
Looks. Yeah, I think so. That's probably what
too.
I would hope for. Yeah, I mean, I guess if I was being honest, I really hope for the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah,
because if you've ever been to the Alamo Bowl, I think you would have your ton of fans there.
True.
And Final Fours and bowl games are meant to be played in the Alamo Dome. The scene, the setting, the proximity of everything, it's perfect.
Yeah,
it is absolutely perfect. But if it's not, but I think they'll take Texas, who's got an 8-win season.
Agreed.
And they, even though I think they've been there the last 3 of the 4 last 4 years or whatever, but I know we're running out of time. But anyway, that I guess San Antonio or Orlando looks good to me.
Level, enjoy your week. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Keep hope alive, Woodman. He's
Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. It's been the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3. For more from Lubbock Sports Station, go to doublet973.com.